voting Slav TV.
Just when you thought that 2018 would perhaps be the year when cucked Canada stopped bending over to Muslim victimhood culture, a fake anti-Muslim hate crime has rocked the nation, sending the Liberal government and media into a complete frenzy of shock and confusion. According to mainstream media reports at the time, 11-year-old Kuala Noman was walking to elementary school in Scarborough, Ontario with her younger brother when a man sliced her hijab with a pair of scissors. Kuala claims that she screamed for help, but that the crazy man just kept cutting her hijab while smiling, and according to her description, the man was of Asian background. While these kinds of things do happen, and are of course much rarer than the mainstream media wants us to believe, you kind of have to ask yourself why a smiling Asian Eddie Scissorhands is chasing down Muslim schoolgirls in broad daylight, attempting to snip off their hijabs. Sure enough, after a lengthy police investigation, the whole incident was proven to be a hoax, and it was determined that little Kuala had lied and fabricated the entire story.
I feel confused, scared, terrified.
As of this week, Kuala's family has issued a formal apology for lying about the crime, even though the media has continued to paint the family as the victims who are somehow deserving of Canadians' apologies. As usual, this incident invoked a typical crybaby reaction from Trudeau's soy boy Liberal government and the mainstream media, which apparently didn't spend a second questioning the validity of the story before crying out about racism and intolerance towards the poor Muslims. Justin Trudeau was quick to cry about the incident on Twitter, and many other Liberal politicians echoed these sentiments, stressing how we need to stand firm and show support for this poor little girl. Other social justice warriors even went as far as to advocate for a National Day of Remembrance and action against Islamophobia, because the last thing that Canada needs more of are foolish motions that aim to suppress open discourse about Islam, all the while fostering the growing phony Muslim victimhood culture. 1 month earlier in Vancouver, a similar Muslim hate crime story made national headlines after a young Muslim lady by the name of Noor Fadel claimed that she was verbally abused by a man while riding public transportation. According to Noor, nobody was there to help other than one brave Samaritan who swiftly jumped in to fight against racism. Although the media was quick to crown this brave stranger as a hero while pointing the finger at white racists, it was later discovered that the man who had said all these things to Noor was in fact speaking in Arabic. On top of all this, Noor also happens to be a prominent youth Muslim activist, raising the question of why these alleged hate crimes always seem to target the very same activists who make such a huge fuss about Islamophobia.
What really is Islam? And why so many people choose to follow, despite the many attempts from the media to show it is a religion that is hollow.
As we've come to witness, the Muslim lobby in Canada and many other Western nations is constantly gaining power, and fake hate crimes against Muslims are a wonderful tool for these lobbies to use in widening the scope of their Islamic propaganda under the guise of quelling things such as hate speech. Coincidentally, this entire anti-Muslim fiasco just happens to be taking place at a time when the Canadian Liberal government is doing everything in its power to paint a positive picture of returning ISIS fighters, all the while spending millions of dollars of taxpayers' money on bogus reintegration programs and art classes for ISIS terrorists. In Trudeau's mind, finger painting and poetry classes will help Ahmed and Mohammed reintegrate and become good old Canadian citizens again after they've spent months in Syria cutting heads off and burning women and children to death. Sadly, if you think this is a joke, it really isn't, because Trudeau has even announced on public television that returning ISIS fighters can prove to be a great voice for Canada. Once again, Trudeau is fully convinced that a bunch of murderers and terrorists with ass-backwards beliefs and ideologies can somehow become model citizens in a Western country whose people and values they're bent on destroying. At present, there are some 60 ISIS fighters who have returned to Canada, and with the Liberals' laissez-faire policies towards tracking terrorism, we can certainly expect that this number will continue to rise. When questioned on the issue of returning terrorists, the Liberal government has proven to be quite muted, and low-testosterone politicians have done everything in their power to label the average concerned Canadian citizen as racist and Islamophobic. While fake hate crimes are nothing new, the hijab-cutting hoax has really shown us just how eager the Liberal government and mainstream media is for jumping onto stories where they can exploit Muslim victimhood culture, all the while whining about racism and hatred towards Muslims. Canada, like many other Western countries, has been involved in a love affair with Islam and Islamists for quite some time now, and the need to create strategies for dealing with increasing Muslim propaganda is greater now than ever. Sadly, if Canadians don't wake up to these problems in 2018, but instead continue drinking the white guilt liberal Kool-Aid, then it won't be surprising to see Canada heading down the same path of Islamic chaos taken by the many once great nations of Europe.